Hi, my classmate Lady Catherine Londoño Peña and I, Arturo Díaz Zamora, are going to present artistic movements for Technical English Unit 4.
First of all, the timeline starting from the Baroque movement at the 17th-19th centuries and ending with Minimalist movement in 1960 to 1970.
First, I start with Baroque. Baroque was the dominant style in art and architecture of 17th century, characterized by self-confidence, dynamism, and a realistic approach to depiction, and its height in Rome from around 1630 to 1680. Its dynamic movement, bold realism, and direct emotional appeal were ideal for proclaiming the revitalized spirit of the Catholic Church. Although it originated in Rome, the Baroque was influential throughout Europe. The greatest exponents include the sculptor and architect Bernini in Rome, and in Northern Europe Sir Peter Paul Rubens, whose ceiling decorations commissioned by Charles I for the London Banquet Hall are still in place. British followers include William Dobson, Sir Peter Lely, Jacob Huysmans, Sir Godfrey Kneller, and painters of wall and ceiling decorations such as Antonio Berrio and Sir James Thornhill. Romanticism. Romanticism originates in parallel in Germany and the United Kingdom, when a group of motley people decide that they are fed up with so much rationalism and enlightenment. The world is rather the opposite, irrational. He is not serene or intellectual, rather it is full of feelings, of imperfections, and there is the grace. This returns that Baroque taste for drama, and if it with violence better than better. War's Man is Dead. It's also not bad. Spice it up with a bit of eroticism. Individual freedom is now what is important, and everyone has their own way of seeking it. Very soon, this idea spread throughout Europe, the first cultural movement to do so, and each country will have its form of romanticism, which is projected in turn in different. Impressionism. Impressionism developed in France in the 19th century and is based on the practice of painting out of doors and spontaneously on the spot, rather than in a studio from sketches. Main Impressionist subjects were landscapes and scenes of everyday life. Impressionist painting was born in the second half of the 19th century and was, broadly speaking, to capture light and the movement, without much regard for the identity of what projected. Things are not defined, but the visual impression is of these things is painted, and that implies that the unconnected parts give rise to unitary whole. It is worth mentioning that the main artist of Impressionism was Claude Monet. Post-Impressionism. The term Post-Impressionism was born in 1910 when an exhibition was held in London curated by the critic Roger Fry, called precisely that way to somewhat unify the sample of paintings by Van Gogh, Gauguin, Seurat, and Cézanne. In a pragmatic way, what characterizes post-impressionism are the short and precise brushstrokes, a reflection of the rapid changes that take place at the time. Pure colors evoke the radicalism that exists in society. Nature is no longer seen subjectively but is observed. The movement of the image, together with the texture, reflect the cultural dynamism that is accelerating thanks to the new means of transport and the importation of exotic subjects, especially from the East. Expressionism. Expressionism refers to art in which the image of reality is distorted to express the feelings or ideas of the artist. In expressionist art, color can be very intense and unnatural. Brushwork is often free, and paint application tends to be generous and highly textured. Impressionist art tends to be emotional and sometimes mystical. It can be seen as an extension of Romanticism. So, expressionism becomes a distortion of reality to express it in a more subjective way. The expressionists, as the formers of reality, have existed since the beginning of art. There we have the cases of Bruegel, Goya, Van Gogh, or El Greco, to name just a few. But it was in this pre-war environment of Germany when the artists with very diverse and different training and intellectual level came together to create a more personal and intuitive art, where the inner vision of the artist predominated.
Cubism. Cubism was a revolutionary new approach to representing reality invented in around 1907 to 1908 by artists Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque. They brought different views of subjects, usually objects or figures, together in the same picture, resulting in paintings that appear fragmented and abstracted. In Cubism, there are no cubes, rather the complete opposite. Cubism consists in recognizing the two-dimensionality of the canvas and not recreating the three-dimensionality. Going back to the beginning, Braque and Picasso were inspired by Cézanne. What they were looking for is to look at an object from all positive points of view. To understand us, it is like disassembling a cardboard box and leaving and completely open on a flat surface, showing everything at once and fitting together. Surrealism, a 20th century literary, philosophical, and artistic movement that explored the workings of the mind, championing the rational, the poetic, and the revolutionary. André Breton was the guru of Surrealism. A poet by vocation, he joined Dadaism, but when this movement ran out of steam, he decided that it had to be continued through the solid theoretical base. In its beginnings, Surrealism was an essentially literary project, but little by little it began to infect the other artistic disciplines. Surrealist art is usually incongruous, dreamlike, and very original, in the sense that the artist shows the most individual face of him. Although it is curious because surrealist art has something universal that we can all understand. Even children can grasp whether something is surreal or not. Pop art, emerging in the mid-1950s in Britain and the late 1950s in the United States. Pop art research its peak in the 1960s. It began as a revolt against dominant approaches to art and culture and points traditional view of what art should be. Young artists felt that what they were taught in an art school and what they saw in museums had nothing to do with their life or the something they saw around them every day. Instead, they turned to sources like Hollywood movies, advertising, product packaging, pop music, and comics for their magic. The reason it had such an impact is that pop artists document what they see around them, with its light and shadows. It is neither more nor less or the plastic manifestation of cultures that is characterized by several factors such as vertiginous consumption, technology, leisure, consumption, fashion, democracy, all are manufactured, packaged, and ready to sell. Abstract expressionism. This is a term applied to new forms of abstract art developed by American painters such as Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, and William de Kooning in the 1940s and 1950s. It was also considered as a pictorial movement within the abstraction that emerged after World War II and the Holocaust. The abstract expressionism maintained the percept of painting alone, of a mandate of absolute sincerity, and of the belief in the artist as an individual who expresses himself through the pictorial plane, the gesture, and the physical action. Minimalism. Minimalism emerged in the late 1950s when artists such as Frank Stella, whose black paintings were exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1959, began to turn away from the gestural art of the previous generation. It flourished in 1960s and 1970s with Carl-Andre van Flavin, Donald Judd, Sol LeWitt, Agnes Martin, and Robert Morris becoming the movement's most important innovators. But the term minimal was first used by Richard Warren in 1965 to refer to Ad Reichardt's paintings and other objects of very high intellectual content but low manufacturing content. Minimalism is, so to speak, like a performance. In a way, we, the spectators, are the ones who do the work, and this is explained by the minimalist artists themselves by stating that these sculptures and only work with the public. If there is no one, they are deactivated.